This is exactly how I would structure a business purchase agreement based on my experience as an M&A lawyer. This video is going to be relevant for anyone who's interested in buying a business, maybe already speaking with sellers and trying to understand how to structure their offer, and those looking to draft heads of terms and wanting to avoid not including things now that may jeopardize the deal later down the line. Now, I've done dozens of M&A deals, especially acting for the buyer in a business purchase. I've drafted these documents many times, and I recognize what kind of issues arise and what kind of risks the buyer takes on when looking to buy a business. Equipped with this experience and knowledge, these are the top 10 things that I would do if I was looking to buy a business. The very first thing that I would do is buy via a special purpose vehicle, an SPV. Now, an SPV is a newly incorporated entity. It's a new limited company that you set up on Companies House, and the sole purpose of that company is to buy the shares in the target business. The reason why we're doing this is because we want the SPV to be the one that owes money to the seller, not us personally. That creates separation between the deal and our personal assets. I don't want my house to be on the line. Now, as a result of us looking to buy the business via an SPV, the seller is likely going to ask for some kind of security, because what we're going to do is defer payments over a period of time, and those payments the seller will want to be secured against some kind of asset. Now, typically the seller will start the negotiations by asking you for a personal guarantee. A personal guarantee pretty much is a contract that says that you personally guarantee the payment obligations of the SPV that you're using to buy the business. So this brings us to the second main thing that I would do in a business purchase, which is reject a personal guarantee and instead offer the seller a debenture over the target business. A debenture is a form of security that someone like the seller can have over the assets of the business. So effectively, you're using the target business's assets as security for the seller-financed loan that the seller is giving to you as the buyer. The reason why we're doing this, again, instead of a personal guarantee, is because we don't want our house to be on the line. I don't want to lose my home in this deal. The third main thing that I would do is pay no more than 30% of the entire purchase price on completion, and ideally that 30% will be paid from funds that are already in the company's bank account. So the completion payment, that 30%, for example, let's say 300k out of a purchase price of £1 million, would be from money that is already in the company's bank account. The completion payment is made on completion, and completion is when you actually take ownership of the business, when the business actually becomes yours. And the reason why we're doing this and deferring a large portion of the purchase price is to also keep the seller's skin still in the game. We want the seller to want the business to do well so that they get their 70%. The second main advantage of not paying the entire 100% on completion, the entire £1 million on completion, is that you don't really need to look for alternative financing options. You don't need to look for invoice financing providers or asset leveraged financing. Instead, the seller gives you a loan. It's a seller financed deal with the initial 30% being from the company and the 70% being seller financed. This removes hassle. I don't need to go and again look for those lenders. I don't also need to deal with an additional third party who might also want security over the target business or might ask me for a personal guarantee. I'm also not paying interest to this lender, to this third party. It simplifies things and it keeps costs lower and possibly makes the deal proceed quicker and at a higher chance of succeeding. The fourth main thing that I would want to do when looking to draft or structure my business purchase agreement is give myself the right to set off claims against the money that I owe to the seller. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's give an example. I owe Joe £5, but Joe owes me £7. Now we can simply set off my £5 against his £7, and now Joe simply has to actually pay me £2 because we set off. Instead of me giving Joe a fiver and Joe giving me £7, he simply gives me 2, and that has been set off. Now the critical advantage isn't a logistical one. We're not trying to avoid bank transaction fees. The real advantage is that since we owe the seller that 70% over a number of years, if we have any claims that we're making against the seller, so for example, if any of the warranties in the business purchase agreement turn out to be untrue and we're looking to claim from the seller, instead of having to chase the seller for the money, sending them a letter and trying to chase them for the money, please pay me the money so I can rectify the issues with the business, we simply set off the amount that we're claiming from the seller against the money that we owe to the seller. The fifth main thing that I would do is include extensive warranties in the business purchase agreement. Warranties are promises that the seller is making to you as the buyer of the business as to the state of the business. So an example of a warranty is the seller saying the target business doesn't owe any money to HMRC. Now that is a promise, a warranty that you're relying on when, for example, looking to enter into the business purchase agreement. And if it turns out that that warranty is untrue, then you can make a claim against the seller for rectifying that issue. The reason why I want to include extensive warranties is actually twofold. Number one, I want to strengthen the right of set-off that we just talked about in the fourth main thing that I would include in the business purchase agreement. But secondly, is to protect myself from unknown issues. As the buyer, I am responsible for conducting due diligence and satisfying myself as to the state of the business. I must be happy with how the business looks. If, for example, I missed something during my due diligence or something didn't come up during due diligence, then I want to be able to protect myself against those possible unknown issues. And the way to do this typically is to include extensive warranties. You include many warranties, promises that benefit you. You want these warranties to say that pretty much the business is a great business, there are no issues with the business, and everything has been done correctly. If anything turns out to be untrue, if there are breaches of those warranties, then you have a claim for a breach of warranty, and you can set off again those amounts from the amounts that you owe to the seller. So in short, if I am worried about something, if I have concerns, or if I have goals that I want to protect myself against, I put them down as warranties. I put them down as promises that the seller is making to me. Keep in mind that it is not uncommon for a business purchase agreement to have a schedule of warranties. Typically it's numbered Schedule 3 or Schedule 4 that runs in the dozens of pages. There'll be dozens of text-filled warranties that protect you or me as the buyer. And I want to have that. I want to have such an extensive schedule that protects me. The sixth main thing that I would do is include a tax covenant in the business purchase agreement. A tax covenant is a schedule, so an extension to the main body of the business purchase agreement, and the purpose of that tax covenant is to protect me against tax liabilities that are owed by the target business. So the way it works is that, for example, if the target business owes money to HMRC for trading activities that occurred before completion, so before I became the owner of the business, those liabilities must be paid by the company before completion, or if they're not, then they're going to be set off against the deferred payments, because I'm going to make a claim against the sellers for those amounts. Now, the critical importance of having a good tax covenant in your business purchase agreement is that sometimes there aren't any known tax liabilities. The sellers genuinely believe that they've properly paid HMRC everything that the company owed to HMRC. But, for example, HMRC comes around, they conduct a tax investigation, and they determine that the company actually owes more money in taxes than anticipated. now that you're the owner of the business, you're going to be the one that needs to fork out that tax money to give to HMRC, but of course you'll want to claim that money back from the sellers. And that is why I would include a tax covenant, so I can claim that money back from unknown tax liabilities, for example, after the HMRC investigation. The seventh thing that I would do in a business purchase is I would want to adjust the purchase price on a cash-free, debt-free basis. I would want to structure the entire deal on a cash-free, debt-free basis. So what does that mean? In short, cash-free, debt-free means that so long as the target business is left with a target amount of cash in the company bank account, any excess cash above that target amount is to be kept by the seller. But if there are any liabilities remaining in the business, then those, pound per pound, are going to reduce the purchase price. So in reality, the seller should hand you a business that has no liabilities and only the amount of cash that we had agreed upon. If there is more cash, then you owe the seller more money, but if there are liabilities, then those are deducted from the purchase price. The reason I want to do this is because from the signing of the heads of terms until completion, quite a few months can go by. Usually at least 3 months go by until you actually become the owner of the business, until you complete on the deal. And during those 3 months, quite a lot of things can occur. The target business continues to operate as a business, of course it would, it needs to pay its bills, but it's possible that the seller, for example, goes and takes out loans in the name of the business, and you hadn't budgeted for these loans when you made that offer in the heads of terms. And that is how I protect myself. I want a cash-free, debt-free business. I want the business with its systems, the people, the assets, but I don't want liabilities. And you can keep all the cash so long as you leave me enough working capital, working cash to run the business for 2 to 3 months. The eighth thing that I would do is include restrictive covenants. Restrictive covenants, as you will know, and as you can find in, for example, employment contracts of senior employees, are restrictions on what these sellers can do after they've sold you the business. Typically, these restrictions restrict the seller from poaching clients, suppliers, and employees from the business that they just sold to you. The reason why I want to include restrictive covenants is because I want to avoid the seller selling me their business, and the day that they sold me the business, or shortly after, they come and they poach all of my key staff, all of my key clients, and my key suppliers away from the business that I just bought. The reason why it's so important to include restrictive covenants, of course, to avoid this issue, is because the sellers have a very strong relationship typically with their employees, with their clients and staff. And what we want to avoid is the seller abusing their position of power, that position of having that relationship with these key parties against you. You don't want them to be able to poach these key parties away from that business. Great. The ninth thing that I would do is ask the seller to provide me as the buyer with transition period services. So the moment I buy the business, I am responsible for the business. I might appoint someone to manage the business for me, but I would like the seller to help me with that transition period. For example, I might want the seller to meet with my appointed manager and show the manager how it works. Where are the things? Where are the passwords? Where are the keys? This is especially important if you're not currently an employee of the target business and you're not conducting a management buyout. If you're conducting a management buyout, likely you have a pretty good idea of how the business is run, but nonetheless, you would benefit from a transition period. Now, before we discuss the last crucial part of this jigsaw that makes the business purchase agreement, feel free to send me an email if looking for professional legal advice. With our legal advice calls, there are no charges, no obligations, and no nonsense. Contact me now. Email me at info@zoppi.co.uk. That's info@zoppi.co.uk. The last thing that I would do when looking to structure a business purchase agreement, and in this case, the ancillary documents, so the documents that relate to that business purchase agreement, is ask the seller to waive any claims that they may have against the target business. Now, this is something that is often not talked about enough or unknown to buyers, but it is very possible for the seller to have a claim against the target business. For example, the seller might claim that they were unfairly dismissed in their capacity as an employee, or that they have money that they are owed from the target business. So the way to do this is we get a waiver from the seller that is signed as a deed. So we want it to be witnessed by someone to make sure that the seller is recognizing that the company doesn't owe them anything and that they don't have any claims against the company. But I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Please comment below how you would structure a business purchase and an M&A deal overall, what you believe I have missed, and what you would do differently. If you want to learn more about minimizing risks in a business purchase, make sure to watch this video to learn about the top 3 legal red flags that come up during due diligence. Thank you for watching.